I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig. Welcome to my new series called The Pivot. We are so excited to bring you deeper conversations with people who've made really impactful changes in their lives. We're going to find out how they do it and how you can also learn from their experience. We're thrilled to be partnering with Signal Relief, a pain patch reliever. I've used it and had tremendous success. We're really excited to have you join us and learn more about how to make the important pivots in your life. Hello, I'm Dr. Robi Ludwig. Welcome to The Pivot. Today we are interviewing Lisa Bloom. Not only is she my friend, she is a high-profile civil rights attorney. She's going to talk about the cases she's working on. P. Diddy is one of those cases and has some very special advice for women who want to protect themselves in the workplace. Today, we are so happy to welcome Lisa Bloom. She is a famous civil rights attorney. She also happens to be Gloria Allred's daughter, who went to Yale Law School. And my friend, we worked together at Court TV. I adore Lisa because she's smart and the whole package. And right now, Lisa, you are busier than ever with P. Diddy right now in the news, and you are representing some people who were allegedly victimized by him.
Yes, and let me just say, Dr. Robi Ludwig, what a fan I am of you and your work for more than 20 years, and what a pleasure it is to be able to talk to you. I think you're always so wise. You have such interesting insights about the world, and I just really love and appreciate you. So P. Diddy, yeah, Sean Combs. So I represent two accusers accusing him of sexual misconduct, a woman and a man. The woman's name is Dawn Richard. A lot of people know her from making the band Danity Kane, Diddy Dirty Money, and she's a very successful and prominent musician in her own right now. And then the man we're just calling John Doe because he chooses to be anonymous as of now. He was an adult entertainer. And as we all know, Sean Combs is currently on trial in his criminal case. My client, Dawn Richard, very bravely went in and testified in that case. And he's got a lot to be concerned about, let's put it that way.
I hope so. I really hope so, because I remember seeing the video of P. Diddy beating his girlfriend at the time. And I remember thinking that this is a reenactment of something that he saw growing up, which is not an excuse,
Right.
But that he was so disturbed on such a deep level. And it's always fascinating to me to see these people rise in some way professionally, yet their personal lives are so, fractured, and how, sociopathic they can be in many ways.
Right. And I love hearing your take on that. And, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know where this stuff comes from. And like you said, it's not an excuse, but it could be an explanation. And we all kind of want to know when we see something like that horrific video that CNN got and played that took place in the Intercontinental Hotel hallway. Video, I think, is always very important in trials. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth 1,000,000 words, right? I mean, he cannot deny what he did in that hallway. It's right there on the video. And, why people get this way, that's such a fascinating question. And Robi, I think about, I think most of us think, gee, if we were multimillionaires, what kind of life we would lead, and something about this power, though, corrupts people. We see it over and over again. I'd love to know what you make of that.
Well, I think in part, we have to look at a person's background. And from what I have heard, P. Diddy had a very disturbed background that, both with his mother, who kind of lived a dangerous lifestyle, and how that exposed him to things he probably should have never seen. And then when people become famous and powerful, they get grandiose and they think that they can do things that other people can't do. And then their characterological deficits really come into play. And people become afraid to basically call them on, the things that they're doing wrong. And it's very interesting with sexual abuse. The victims often feel very conflicted because while they know they were abused, there may be a piece of them that wants to be loved and approved of by the abuser. Now, maybe they had an abuser in their background, so it's a reenactment for them. But I think that's what makes it so hard for a lot of these victims to come out. And as in the P. Diddy case, the loving texts, they were, reporting the loving texts. And I, as a therapist, know that means nothing. That's part of the game. That's part of the cycle. Will you love me? Can you accept me? And there's a part of them that wants to be loved and accepted by the abuser and make the abuse go away. And of course, it never goes away.
Well, listen, what do we tell little girls when little boys are picking on them in school? Oh, he just likes you, right? I think we have to unlearn this at a very young age, that if a boy is being annoying or hitting you, that's not an appropriate way to show love. And we don't just brush it off, stay away from him. Tell him you don't like it. Report him, right? We inculcate girls at a very young age to accept bad behavior by boys. And as they get older, as you say, I listened to Cassie's testimony for several days in that courtroom. It's just heartbreaking how she says she loved Sean Combs, and I believe that she did. And she was trying and trying and trying to get him to just be like a boyfriend to her, to talk to her, to care about her, to spend time alone with her. And clearly all he wanted was the sexual relationship, the freak-offs where male escorts would come in and have sex with her. And then maybe at the end, after days of that, he would have sex with her, right? And things become normalized in relationships that are just, I think, so shocking. I know, like, in a lot of the cases I do, because I've been representing victims of discrimination, harassment, and abuse for many years, decades. And women come out of these relationships and go, oh my God, what did I accept? What became normal? What did I allow? Who was I? I have a client who just got out of a relationship weeks ago, and she says, I can't believe I sent him these texts. I'm so embarrassed. But as you say, that really doesn't tell us anything because it's a very normal trauma response.
Yes, it doesn't tell us the whole story. And sometimes, we have women who really believe, well, I can change him. He's hurting. He's damaged.
Yeah.
And they don't realize that they are getting damaged. And there's a hope. A lot of people get into relationships with the person they think this person could be. And it's not who the person is or maybe will ever be.
Why do we as women do that? Why do we do that?
There's a lot of hope in relationships, and I don't think we're really taught how to have healthy relationships or healthy marriages or even healthy sex. It's not something that's really discussed. So we buy into this mythic idea of the movies, right? You get married and then you happily go off into the sunset, and the reality is that's when the work starts.
Yeah. Right.
We don't know that we need to expect conflict, but that there's respect that has to be there. And some people just never know that that's a possibility for them. And maybe some of the girls, thought with P. Diddy's power, and if they could get him to love them, they could manage the situation. And it was just a situation that could not be managed.
Yeah. And look, in all of these cases, and certainly in all of my abuse cases, the man can also be very charming at times and very kind and loving and charismatic, and right. So, nothing is all one way or all the other way. There are always shades of gray.
And the money too.
And the money can be very intoxicating.
Yeah. I mean, to be in a relationship where you're being treated like you never imagined you could be, and just all the excesses, it's probably just very seductive. So it's a confusing message and probably very hard to get out of once your ideas have been distorted. But I think something has changed, and it's thanks to the work that you've done, Lisa, in the Me Too movement. Before the Me Too movement, if a woman was sexually abused or came out and wanted to bring a case to the courtroom, she was demonized. On some level, she was judged, maybe even more than the man was, is putting herself in that situation, dressing a certain way,
Right.
not knowing the rules.
Complaining fast enough.
Yeah, it's her own fault. Didn't she see it coming?
Right.
Why'd she say yes? And I think after the Me Too movement, we see these women very differently. What's your thought on that?
It's a great subject. I think the height of the Me Too movement was around 2017, 2018. And look, I've been doing these cases since 1986. So I do them, whether it's in style or whether it's not in style. I feel like, the pendulum kind of swings in public opinion. In 2017 and 2018, I think a lot of people had their eyes opened. And I had a couple of sexual harassment trials in early 2019 where the jurors afterwards said to me, I was really happy to be part of the Me Too movement in this own small way. I had a male juror who said, I never really thought about sexual harassment. And I heard about the Me Too movement. I didn't really know much about it. And then I got to be part of this trial and stand up for justice for your client. And I was really proud to do it. And it changed my life. And I'm like, get that. You are fantastic. Good for you. Thank you so much. Now here we are in 2025. I think there is a backlash. Some people think it went too far. And, like any giant movement with millions and millions of people, it did go too far in some situations. There's a difference between rape and one inappropriate comment, right? And that's
Yeah.
always been something that I've had to look at in my cases because people come to me with every kind of case imaginable. And if it's something that's really pretty minor, I encourage them to go to their HR department or to tell the perpetrator to knock it off, before filing a lawsuit over it. And people do not need to be canceled about, one boneheaded remark that I've certainly made my share over the years, right? But if it's rape, if it's sexual assault,
Yeah.
if it's, which is what most of my cases are, or sexual harassment where somebody's really being targeted and it is affecting her job, that's illegal. And I would hope that everybody understands that it's wrong. I will say one, I think, very concrete benefit of the Me Too movement is one of the arguments that I've always heard people do seem to understand better, and that is that victims don't complain immediately, right? Victims will generally let it slide, hope it doesn't happen again, kind of ignore it, kind of pretend it didn't happen. Then it happens again. Well, okay, but then he said he wouldn't do it anymore. Time passes and victims are trying to navigate and trying to figure it out. And some people don't come forward for years. Some people take
Yes.
these secrets to their graves. And I think people do understand that better and they don't hold that against victims as much. But still, victims have to prove their case in court, just like they always did. And these ridiculous old arguments that you mentioned about like, what was she wearing? What did she say? Those still come up. And women are still socialized to be nice and to be friendly. And even to somebody who treats us badly, we still have to smile and be nice. And I say to women, you don't have to. And again, let's raise our daughters that if a boy or a man makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to be nice to him. That's not your job. And you can, in fact, tell him that you didn't like it. And it's a really good muscle to start exercising early in life. Tell people, no, I didn't like it. Please don't do that again. Thank you very much.
So, in terms of the pivot, Lisa, how do you see the public kind of pivoting about these sexual harassment cases in terms of how they protect themselves or how they are perceived in the court of law, how lawyers experience them, since you've been doing this for such a long time?
Great question. Let's start with how people can protect themselves. And again, it's usually women. We represent men too, but it's usually women. So the best way to protect yourself is to document everything, right? If somebody sends you a text, screen share it and save it. And please send it to yourself somewhere that's preserved in the cloud. I can't tell you how many clients come to me and say, oh, well, I have it, but it's on an old phone and maybe the phone company can access it. They can't. Okay, you got to save it. Okay, take some responsibility, send it to your personal email and save it in the cloud. Whatever the documentation is. Talk to witnesses. If somebody makes comments to you in front of another person, immediately say to the other person, did you hear what he just said? And if they say yes, okay, make a note to yourself, person's name, phone number. Okay, let's assume you might get fired and you might lose access to your work email and Slack and so forth. So save it in your private records. Another thing that's very important to do is to complain in writing to HR. Just the facts. You can leave all of your emotions and your feelings and your speculation out of it. Just think who, what, when, where, how, what happened, what was said. You can say briefly how it made you feel. It made you feel uncomfortable. It made you feel unsafe. Document in writing. A lot of people don't want to do that, but if you just complain orally, 9 times out of 10 later on, they're going to say, oh, she didn't really complain, or she complained about something else, or she said it wasn't that big of a deal, or she said they didn't want us to do an investigation. They're going to twist your words. So put it in writing, and again, save a copy. You will be surprised that some companies will do the right thing, which is they're legally required to do a prompt, thorough investigation. If they find that there was sexual harassment, punish the perpetrator, protect the victim. Many of them will do that. But if they don't, now is the time for you to call a lawyer like me and get some, legal advice about what your rights are. And certainly if you complain to HR and you're fired, now you have a sexual harassment claim and a retaliation claim. And we do a lot of cases like that. And those cases are very significant, right? Because nobody should be penalized for standing up for their rights.
So, as we come to a close, Lisa, I wonder if there's a difference between the celebrity cases that you represent and the non-celebrity cases. What do you notice?
I'm kind of known for these celebrity cases, but 95% of our cases don't involve any celebrities. They're just everyday people standing up for their rights. And what's the difference? I mean, the media, that's a big difference, right? If the media is involved, it actually helps us a lot of times because there's reporters out there gathering information and maybe something I didn't know about. But what's similar is that in every case, it is very hard to stand up for your rights. It's every client I've ever had has been scared, right? They're terrified to talk to a lawyer. They're terrified to bring their claims, but we understand that at our firm. We understand that our job is to be kind and compassionate with our clients and fierce and aggressive with the other side. That's what people deserve in a lawyer. And if you have a lawyer and they're not treating you that way, find somebody else because you deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And I know it's a very scary process to stand up for your rights, but everybody who does it is making the world a little bit better for the next person.
What's your next pivot, your next chapter right now?
My next chapter, well, I mean, off duty, I do a lot of long distance backpacking, as you probably know. If people want to follow me on Instagram, Lisa Bloom-esque, you can see some of that, especially in the summer. I'm out on the Pacific Crest Trail, carrying a big backpack up and down mountains because apparently I'm a little crazy. And this is something that I really love to do. It keeps me grounded, keeps me centered. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, it keeps you strong for all of these cases. Lisa, thank you so much and best of luck with the case. We'll be watching you to see how it all turns out, as the rest of the world will be watching as well.
Well, I love you, Robbie. Thank you so much for the honor of having me on.